NECANN's 4th Annual New York Cannabis Convention comes to Rochester September 19th and 20th. Network with thousands of industry professionals at the Floreno Convention Center. Tickets on sale now at necann.com. That's NECANN.com. Welcome to Joint Session Diverse Voices in New York State Cannabis, the podcast where policymakers, legislators, thought leaders, licensees, and advocates come to discuss the evolving landscape of cannabis in New York and beyond. I'm Herb Barbeau, former Director of Operations at New York's Office of Cannabis Management. Each episode, we bring you in-depth conversations with key voices shaping policy, business, and advocacy, plus expert insights on the latest developments impacting the industry. And now for the episode. Welcome to episode 24 of season 2 of Joint Session. This is Herb Barbeau. In this licensee highlight episode, we'll speak with Brendan McKee, co-founder and chief operating officer of Silver Therapeutics, with dispensaries throughout the Northeast, including 3 in New York State. But before we hear from Brendan, we'll take a spin around this week's news. Anti-legalization group Smart Approaches to Marijuana is taking the opportunity of Trump's takeover of D.C. to urge his administration to close cannabis shops too. If you recall, back in April, the Department of Justice sent a letter to a licensed medical cannabis shop called Green Theory to say that they are too close to schools and in violation of federal laws. Sam's letter, which is addressed to Trump, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and D.C. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, calls out Green Theory, as well as 3 other shops. We were heartened to see interim U.S. Attorney Ed Martin, who was replaced by Pirro because he was viewed so poorly that he couldn't get the Senate to hold hearings on his confirmation, take initial steps against one of the worst offenders, Green Theory, in April. However, we have not seen any public progress since then. We hope the initiative you announced recently, referring to the militarization of D.C., will provide another opportunity for you to protect the district's children by taking swift action to close down all the offending marijuana retailers near schools and to inform the D.C. government that any further licensing of retailers at locations in violation of the Federal Drug-Free School Zones Act will be treated as a criminal conspiracy, the letter reads. Last week, the American Trucking Association sent a letter to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy laying out their concerns with rescheduling. Given the heightened public attention to marijuana policy and the possibility of federal rescheduling of marijuana in the near term, we are requesting clarity on DOT's plan to address such a change, the group wrote, adding that they want to be sure any federal policy shift preserves the authority, tools, and technical capacity necessary to continue testing DOT-regulated, safety-sensitive workers. Last year, ATA sent a similar letter to then Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, after which Buttigieg assured them DOT testing rules would remain intact. ATA was also among the more than a dozen or so major transport groups that submitted public comment on rescheduling. After more than 5 years of legal battles, Michigan's Cannabis Regulatory Agency announced this week that it has finally banned cannabis lab Varieties and its founders from the state's cannabis industry. In 2021, the CRA first recalled cannabis products tested by Varieties, one of the state's biggest labs, because the results were inaccurate. Varieties sued. CRA investigations found numerous violations in how the lab tested products, and over the years filed 6 formal complaints against the company. In the settlement, Varieties agreed to cease operations by September 28, in addition to admitting to all regulatory violations alleged in the CRA's 6 administrative complaints, the CRA said. This is justice, plain and simple, said CRA Executive Director Brian Hanna in the announcement. Varieties failed to uphold the standards required in marijuana safety compliance facilities in Michigan. Varieties circumvented the rules. Their majority owners will never operate in this space again, and the Michigan cannabis industry will be stronger for it. This wasn't just a single misstep, Hanna added. It was a sustained, deliberate pattern. This wasn't just a single misstep, Hanna added. It was a sustained, deliberate pattern of noncompliance that shook confidence in the entire regulated cannabis system. In a new lawsuit filed in Albany Supreme Court, 12 New York cannabis licensees, including conditional adult use retail dispensaries like Housing Works and Con Bud, are challenging the Office of Cannabis Management's recent, sudden reinterpretation of cannabis law. The crux of the suit relates to how close licensed cannabis shops can be located to schools. OCM previously approved dispensary sites based on whether they were located within 500 feet of a school entrance. Last month, OCM abruptly announced a new interpretation: 500 feet from any part of a school's property line, and crucially, it also said this new interpretation would be applied retroactively. The petitioners, which are seeking an injunction and a guarantee that their previously approved locations are compliant, argue that the new interpretation is unlawful because it skipped over the State Administrative Procedure Act, among other reasons. Basically, that this is now a new rule and needs to go through the public comments and review period before being finalized. They also argue that it undermines the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act's intentional equity mandate to lift up justice-involved individuals. This new interpretation, they said, disproportionately harms these justice-involved licensees. Thank you to Cannabis Wire for the news. Check out Cannabis Wire at cannabiswire.com. My guest in this licensee highlight episode is Brendan McKee, co-founder and chief operating officer of Silver Therapeutics, with dispensaries in New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine, and I think at some point in the near future, Minnesota. Welcome, Brendan.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and grateful to share our story. So I appreciate it.
Well, I should say here that I emailed you about a month or so ago, and I got an out-of-office message that said, and this is what it said. It said, please contact Brian for anything HR related, Zach for anything retail related, David for anything wholesale related, Ellie for anything Maine related, Jess for anything expansion related, Rain for anything marketing or sponsorship related, Darlene for anything accounting related, Canna Planners for anything website or digital related, and then a number for emergencies. I don't know what kind of emergencies you'd expect, so I'm not sure what you do, but we're going to find out today, Brendan. Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Sounds like you have a great crew there.
We do. We truly have the best team. And just so you know, that emergency number is my number.
Oh.
So I am always on. And I'm so in love with our organization and what we do and what this plant does for people. So, our team is incredible, and our retention rate reflects that. I mean, we have like a 94 or 95+% retention rate year over year with our team. So, I know that they enjoy what they do and the people that they help. So yeah,
and I have read about the retention rate, so I do have some questions related to that. But first, let's just start at the beginning. So what sort of led you on this cannabis journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been consuming cannabis for longer than I care to admit. I was in my teenage years, and where I grew up, very small town, Hull, Massachusetts. You drank beer, you played sports, and you smoked weed. I mean, that was just kind of what you did. And without even realizing it, though, as I got older, I was essentially kind of self-medicating. I played football in college and then professionally over in Europe, came back, got into, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts. And it just always, it's always been there for me, to kind of help me rev my engine down, help me relax, help me, just deal with things that happen in life. And so when the opportunity came in Massachusetts, to, with legalization, with their medical market, and then ultimately with adult use, I literally dropped everything. I cashed out my Schwab account, and I went all in. I mean, truly, like I put all the chips on the table for this back in, 2018, 2017. So, that's where it all started, legally.
Okay. And now you've expanded across multiple states, and I'm not sure if I got it all right, but it's New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Maine, and then soon Minnesota?
Yes. Yeah. So we're really excited about Minnesota. We locked in a location in the town of Stillwater, and we've received our local approvals there.
What's your strategy for that multi-state expansion? Like, how do you make sure that you're not moving too quickly and growing too big?
Yeah, we're very mindful of that. At the end of the day, it's a math problem. we need to make sure that from a budget perspective, from a forecast perspective, we have enough cash on hand, right, to be able to expand and maintain compliance with our lender and have that war chest for other opportunities. So yeah, we're just very calculated about how we expand. And we've since founding the organization, we've opened 11 retails. So each one we get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. So, and I think we've gotten really good at anticipating, right, potential issues. So yeah, it's listen, things are going to pop up that you can't anticipate, but we've built an incredible team. And collectively, we have a really strong brain trust, and I think we've done an awesome job of navigating existing hurdles, potential hurdles. So yeah, we're very, very mindful about how we expand.
So now, going back to the first dispensary, what challenges did you face there that sort of informed, that growth and how you're able to expand in a controlled way?
Yeah, I mean, the first dispensary, I think, demonstrated that absolutely anything can happen, right? Like good and bad. So, we opened one of the early adult use stores in Massachusetts. This was like beginning of early 2019. I think we were like the 10th or 11th in the state to open. So, ultimately, we saw a great windfall, right? Tremendous traffic,
Mhm.
high cart sizes, and then not that long after, the governor of Massachusetts at the time just shut us down because of COVID, right?
Wow.
So there we were. We built up some really great momentum. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, liquor stores could remain open, but adult use dispensaries were shut down. I want to say it was close to 10 to 12 weeks.
Wow.
So what
Yeah, I
we
was
did,
going to ask about that because in most
yeah.
jurisdictions, liquor stores were deemed essential services
Yep.
and were allowed to remain open, like supermarkets, for example. And so they didn't do that with the cannabis dispensaries.
Correct. Governor Baker at the time did not deem adult use dispensaries as essential. Medical remained open. So at that time, as you can imagine, right?
Mhm.
Like, myself and my partners were like, we just stopped paying ourselves. We continued to pay our team because we wanted to keep them happy and support them through what was obviously a very challenging time. Um, and then we get back open, and it was just like boom. I mean, we did curbside. We were serving hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of people a day. Cart sizes were at an all-time high. I mean, it was wild. That store still does really well, but as you can imagine, I mean, now that Vermont's opened up, New York's opened up, that store's doing, call it one third, right, or half to one third of what it did at its peak, which is completely normal. That's
Mhm.
that's what happens when you open a border store and the contiguous states open up, right? So, and that's why we've continued to expand in those contiguous states and markets because people are familiar with our brand, they trust our brand. We have roots in those areas through our partners, and it made the most sense to expand in that way. But I mean, it's to back to the original question, like anything can happen, right? Like regulatory delays,
Mhm.
issues,
Global pandemic.
yeah, global pandemic, um, supply issues,
Mhm.
testing issues, real estate issues, zoning issues. I mean, it like it is. It's there are certainly no shortage of roadblocks. And I feel like we've just about experienced most or all at this point.
Mhm. One of the issues that you apparently don't have is the employee retention issue.
Yep.
Uh, how do you explain that, of maintaining that 90 plus employee retention?
Yeah, there's definitely a few things. We're compassionate, we're people first, right? So, um, we encourage people to take time off, to focus on themselves, focus on their families. We pay people well, right? We're very competitive from a comp standpoint. We have a very robust benefits program. We pay, we have healthcare options. So we run it like any other business, and or like any other business should run. We have open lines of communication with management, so any given person on any given day has a line to me. If they have a concern, they can call me, they can Slack me, they can email me, we can hop on a Zoom, we can hop on a Google Meet. I'll visit. I think part of it too is I'm very hands-on, so I make it my goal to visit each facility, ideally on a monthly basis, just as a touch point. When I visit, I'm not going in there to review anything, to criticize anything, I purely go in there, I buy some product, I have some fun, I joke around, ask how folks are doing, ask how I can be more supportive, how we can be more supportive, and I leave it at that. They don't need me coming in there and
No, absolutely, because I think a visit like that, right, could be more disruptive than anything else when the boss is coming. So that's great that you handle it that way. So now, how do you hire and train staff across state lines, or do you do that just sort of within each particular state?
Yeah, no, we have a great team, like a great onboarding hiring team. So we use Zenden. Shout out to Kim Bruin. She just does a tremendous job. Who works directly with Brian Mullaney, who's really heads up like culture and onboarding. And so yeah, I mean, from a hiring perspective, each state's a little bit different in terms of like registered agent status. Like there's kind of administrative differences, but ultimately, we're looking for people that that are happy, right? That are passionate about cannabis, obviously have solid references, but yeah, and are coachable, right? Like you gotta kind of keep your ego at the door, right? And understand that, I think we've had more challenges when we hire individuals from another cannabis organization and they come in, um, and they have to kind of like undo, unlearn some of the things that maybe that organization was doing. Um, whereas like just bringing someone in fresh who's just hungry, willing to learn, has never participated in the industry, but is passionate about cannabis, like those folks tend to be really ideal. But yeah, it's a dynamic, unique process that ultimately, like, just the quality of our people kind of drive that, and people want to work for us, and we've built up a really solid reputation. And we just hired a new buyer, and we connected yesterday, and he's like, I've yet to talk to someone who like has anything negative to say about your company. Like, what is this, like, for real? I said, well, we pay our bills, we treat our people with respect. We're always trying to get better, like from the, I hate to say this, but like top down. And my coach in college used to say shit trickles down, right? So if the head coach isn't doing his job, that's gonna make its way down, and or over, or however you want to look at it. And I take that very personally. Like, if I'm not doing what I should be doing, how can I expect my team to do what they need to do?
And people will see that, right?
Totally, totally. And I'll do anything. When I visited one of our locations the other day, I picked up the parking lot. There's just like little piece of trash, and it's like, that's, and it's not me being like a martyr. So it's just like, I see it and I fix it. I'm a doer, I'm a fixer. That's just like by nature. But I think it resonates, with our team when they're like, wow, okay, owner's coming in and he's like, paying attention to these things, and he cares about these things. So I just think the little things like that add up with our team, I think.
So now you mentioned company cultures, and what role does company culture play in the business model? How do you keep it consistent across 12 stores in 4 or 5 different states? And at the same time, I imagine that you want to allow for some local flavor, right? I mean, because New York is different than Massachusetts. I almost didn't have you on when I realized you were from Boston, but that's another thing. But so how do you do all of that, and again, have this 90+ employee retention rate?
It's a great question because we've really improved our managers' meetings,
Mhm.
like the cadence. We actually brought in like an outside corporate coach to look at what we're doing and to improve what we're doing. So what we do now is we have monthly manager meetings. Every manager on there with Zach Wilson, who's our VP of Ops. Unreal. Like he crushes it. And what the beauty of this is, like, there's like three or four bullets that each person brings to the table so that there's real structure behind it.
This is like the agenda for that meeting.
Exactly. And each person brings like the three or four like their questions or answers to the things that are being covered. And the beautiful thing about this structure is that they in real time they end up problem solving together.
Mhm.
And that's where and through meetings like that, that's where you can build that consistency
Mhm.
across. So to be clear, we have 9 stores open. We've sold 2 retail. So we've
Oh, okay.
we've we've opened 11. Obviously our Brooklyn location is about to open hopefully within the next couple months.
Where in Brooklyn?
Greenpoint.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah, yeah, right on Manhattan Ave. We're like right down the road from Radio Bakery. On the same stretch, there's like a Popeyes, a Starbucks, and a McDonald's. I mean, it's
Mhm.
it's like couldn't be better from a foot traffic standpoint. But yeah, I mean, there's consistency with branding, with of course with management structure in terms of like, how managers are overseeing their teams. And then we collectively come together and just maintain that consistency. But yeah, it's certainly something like as we scale, as we continue to grow, we're looking at more kind of regional based management. So maybe like once we kind of get to probably a dozen stores, we'll probably either like split them in half and have like 2 regional managers.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's always evolving. And again, I take pride in asking for help and going to mentors, going to other folks outside of our organization to say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. This is what we're anticipating. How can you help us? Because I don't know what I don't know, and I think as a leader, it's your job to position the organization the best you can. And I think a big part of that is looking outwards, right? And
Mhm.
and finding folks that can facilitate that growth, and maintain the culture, maintain the retention. So yeah, I know that was pretty long-winded, but that's where we're at.
No, no, that was great. And I should say, since you mentioned the upcoming Brooklyn store in New York, you're in Albany, city where I spent a lot of time, in Lake George, which is a beautiful town, as well as Saratoga Springs, which is just an amazing town.
Yeah, no, we New York's amazing. So if it makes you feel any better, I lived in Manhattan on 2 separate occasions.
All right.
My cousin and my brother live in Brooklyn. They own businesses there. Uh, so I love New York. I always have, always will. And yeah, the Saratoga is incredible. Lake George is beautiful. Albany's been awesome. So super grateful for being in New York. It's a wonderful market. And you kind of hit on it a little bit earlier. Every team's a little bit different. Every store is a little bit different. And we make it a point to hire local, right? So that
Mhm.
so that these stores feel they have the energy of the local community. That's critical for us. That's something we always do.
Mhm. Now, in the cannabis industry, at least on the East Coast, I mean, you've been in this industry, as long as anyone, on the legal side. So how has it changed since you began with Silver Therapeutics?
Oh man, I mean, it's a whole lot cheaper. I remember when I mean, we were buying pounds at one point on the wholesale market for $4,000. I mean, just like absolutely insane. Now that was the very beginning, right? That was when they could charge that. So just the price compression has been pretty radical. The uh just the rollout of additional states and how that impacts our business, right? You know, yeah, it's a very unique. I mean, think about it. I was having a conversation the other day, like I mean, in what other industry are prices going down for commodities? Like we are, cannabis is one of the only things in which like it is getting cheaper to buy cannabis. I name anything else that's getting cheaper.
And people still trying to get into the industry.
Yep, exactly. So it's really funky, but again, we love it. We're in it for the long haul. Part of our strategy around retention, we're actually in the process of selling the company to our employees, via an ESOP, so an employee stock ownership plan.
Mhm.
So by the end of this year, our employees will own this company, which I'm really proud of.
And what's the advantage of doing that?
Retention,
Hmm.
create real wealth and incentives for the team. Obviously, as owners, everyone has skin in the game. We already tell our managers, like, this is your store. You need to really treat it like you're the owner. And now we can say, you're the owner. Like you got like you got to own what happens here and take it very seriously, and maintain the culture, maintain the high quality products, maintain the premier service. So of course there's other benefits. As an ESOP trust and entity, you are no longer you're tax exempt, so we no longer have to pay federal or state taxes, which of course dramatically improves cash flow,
Hmm.
and our ability to reinvest in the business, our ability to potentially acquire more businesses and expand the portfolio. So
So
uh,
this takes you out of the IRS 280E issue.
correct. Yes. So, yeah, it solves a lot of problems that cannabis operators are facing. Again, fortunately, we already have great retention. We've built a wonderful brand. We have a ton of loyalty among the communities we serve. This is just going to take it to another level, which is again what we're always trying to do, right? We're always trying to get a little bit better every day. So this definitely facilitates that.
So I've also read that you're interested in becoming a firefighter and a podcaster. So I would say stay away from podcasting. We don't usually accomplish that. But so how does this sort of tie into the cannabis journey?
Um, I really love people, like truly, and in one way or another, I've always been in a position professionally that like ultimately that's what I'm doing. I'm helping people. Whether it was, when my stint in finance, when I was in wealth management, or when I was a performance coach, and I was like working with high net worth
Mhm.
individuals in Boston, kind of like physically and mentally improve. And now with cannabis, it's the same. I mean, listen, of course there's people out there that are just, they're just trying to get as high as possible, and maybe that's their that maybe that's what they think is their, kind of self treatment, right? For whatever it is they're going through. Um, I mean, every single my mom, my dad, my aunts, my uncles, pretty much all of them at this point are taking some sort of, pain or sleep aid,
Mhm.
via cannabis, whether it's tinctures, edibles, whatever. Um, and yes, I also believe cannabis is not for everybody, right? Like there is data out there to support that, like I think particularly young men, right, um, are at higher risk of like triggering, mental
Mhm.
mental things, mental issues. So like I'm not that guy that's everybody should use cannabis. Like absolutely not. Like you gotta treat this like you would anything else. You gotta go low and slow. You gotta be exploratory. You gotta be asking the right questions. You gotta be going to the right groups to ask those questions, trustworthy groups, not people that are just trying to sling product and get you out the door. Um, but yeah, I kind of went off on a on a tangent there. But being a firefighter, my journey with that is, learn a new skill, right, that I can pass along to my children, help the community, be part of the community to like bring that to another level. Like I live in the town of Harvard, Massachusetts, which is beautiful. It's where my wife is from. My in-laws live a mile and a half down the road. It is such an ideal setup for us. I work constantly, and the fact that we can lean on them and I can still travel and do what I need to do. But I'll be honest with you, I'm missing a little bit of like camaraderie. I've built this business on the road, and so my friends really are my family. You know, like my inner circle is like they are my brothers. You know, and unfortunately we're kind of spread out, so I can't see them all the time. So selfishly, I'm also looking for like some camaraderie a little
A
bit,
band of brothers.
a band of brothers. So that's definitely that's been motivating me. But yeah, I love to learn new things. I love to be physical. I love to use my body. So and I've always been fascinated by law enforcement and firefighters. I have a ton of friends on both sides. Um, and unfortunately, law enforcement, it's challenging out there. You know, there's just I know there's really wonderful cops, and there's some that are not, and they kind of can spoil it, for the rest. Um, I don't know anyone that doesn't like firefighters. Yeah, they're pretty beloved. So yeah, that's why I'm chasing that down. And it's funny. I just enrolled in my EMT course, my accelerated EMT course. So excited to get that. It's be about 10 weeks or something. So excited to wrap that up
All right. Please let me know, when you do this.
for sure.
Now you've been through the application and licensing process, and you've dealt with a number of different jurisdictions, regulatory bodies. How did the experience in New York compare? Like, what did New York get right, and where could New York improve?
That's a great question. I have to be honest with you. My partner Josh Silver navigates all things legal.
Hmm.
And we have great attorney. He's an attorney himself, so he actually lived in New York City. That's where he had his first job as an attorney. And he focused on real estate and like in zoning. And so Josh has really navigated that. My understanding in obviously speaking with him daily and through the process was, um, I think it was relatively straightforward. I think the some of the lawsuits that occurred caused some delays, but again, kind of outside of our control. And we use shout out to Mike McQueenie. He's a great attorney out of Foley. We work with him hand in hand. And Jeff Schultz as well. Just like really, really good people. And through them and with Josh, like we've just been able to navigate the process and of course maintain compliance and all of the intricacies that make the regulatory body up in New York. We of course take very seriously, and we comply. Like that's there's too much at stake. I when I hear or see groups try to operate in the gray or try to circumvent things, I'm just like, what are you doing? Why are you taking that risk? So we take tremendous pride in doing things the right way.
Yeah, no, we just did a recent episode on compliance. Just terrific. So where can people find out more about Silver Therapeutics? Where could they visit a store? If they're interested in joining this great team in Brooklyn, what should they do?
Yeah, for sure. So silvercannabis.com is one of our websites. Always take the highroad.com, silver-therapeutics.com, silverthera.com. I own a bunch of URLs just so that we could it could be easy for folks. So yeah, you can go to our website. And there's a careers page there, excuse me. You obviously we have social channels, but I think the website's the best resource to just kind of understand the brand, potentially apply for a role. We'll probably put an opportunity listing out for Brooklyn within probably like 6 weeks. We 6 to 8 weeks hopefully. We're fortunately, again, like People like to work with us. We're able to onboard folks pretty quickly. Actually, that's another thing in New York. I think it's easier in New York to onboard folks than say in Massachusetts or Maine,
Huh.
which has been really nice.
I did want to ask, where did the name come from, Silver Therapeutics?
You're gonna laugh. So when Josh and I got together, he had started the application process, and his last name is Silver, so he
Oh,
put Silver Therapeutics, and we honestly we just went with it, and because we actually did technically hold a medical license at one point in Massachusetts that eventually flipped to adult use, but I think the word therapeutics, which ironically enough, we're not allowed to use in New York, hence why it's called Silver Cannabis Company. Um, I think it built a lot of trust among the communities we serve, and we talked a lot about name changes, and ultimately where we landed is we kept Silver Therapeutics, as I just mentioned, we have Silver Cannabis Company, and then we have an urban brand called City Farm, which is our Boston location and will be our Brooklyn location. So Brooklyn will be a City Farm location. So those are the brands, the retail brands we operate under.
all right. Well, Brendan, thank you for your time today. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you a little better. You're doing a great job, and I think a lot of what you said today about the company culture will be informative and interesting to, especially a lot of the business owners that are coming into the cannabis space right now. I think they would all, in a number of years, like to be in a place like you are, where they have multiple stores in multiple jurisdictions.
I appreciate that. It's an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to be able to, like I said, share our story. And so, Herb, thank you for having me. Grateful for you and the platform you've built. So always here for you. And hopefully I look forward to catching up with you in Brooklyn.
That's it for this episode of Joint Session Diverse Voices in New York State Cannabis. If you found today's discussion valuable, consider leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps more listeners find the show. Better yet, share it with colleagues, advocates, and anyone interested in the future of cannabis in New York. Joint Session is produced by me, Herb Barbeau, together with executive producer Robert Curtis from SimLab Media. Special thanks as always to Cannabis Wire. You can follow us on Instagram at jointsession.pod and on LinkedIn at Joint Session Podcast. If you have any comments, questions, or topic suggestions, reach out to me at herb.jointsession@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Herb Barbeau. Thanks for listening.